Well, Maha Azzam joins me now in the studio. She is the head of the Egyptian Revolutionary Council. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
I just want to begin with your broad view here. Is Egypt a better country today? Because I've heard too many people say that they actually regret, Egyptians themselves regret even participating in the revolution that overthrew Hosni Mubarak.
5 years on after the military coup, a democratic experiment was derailed, hijacked, and for 5 years the Egyptian people have suffered, even those who initially supported the coup. What we have in Egypt today is actually a republic of fear. No one can speak out. Control is through arbitrary arrests, extrajudicial killings, disappearances. The list is painful, the violations so excessive, they are unprecedented in the modern history of Egypt. What we also have is economic failure and security failure. Economically, the situation in Egypt is such that the vast majority of people feel poorer than they ever did. The middle class is struggling to survive. And in terms of security, the escalation of violence in Sinai, violent extremism, has increased fivefold according to experts. The situation is dire on all levels. A military dictatorship has not delivered in the same way it hasn't delivered for decades, and Sisi is no different. The sad thing is that Egypt was on the road to democracy. It elected its first civilian president who was kidnapped and remains in prison today in solitary confinement without medication, as do tens of thousands of others from all walks of life.
Are you convinced the Muslim Brotherhood would have served Egypt better?
It's not about the Muslim Brotherhood or not the Muslim Brotherhood. What would have served Egypt better was that it was an elected government. There was going to be accountability and participation. The Muslim Brotherhood was committed to weeding out corruption, and this was not about the Muslim Brotherhood. President Morsi hailed from the Muslim Brotherhood, but he was elected by all Egyptians.
But, I mean, the issue for so many Egyptians, and we saw one in that report there, they didn't want the revolution to bring about what they saw as another party that wouldn't respect all the rules of the democracy that they'd called for. But, I mean, that aside, though, it is what it is now. Where does Egypt go from here? Can Sisi be taken out by a free and fair election in the near future?
Well, what we saw in March with his attempt at legitimizing his role was another election. He held elections in 2014 and again just a few months ago. In both cases, the majority of people didn't come out. He still is an illegitimate president who came to power on the back of tanks. And those who stood by the democratic game are ultimately those people who went out and voted in 2012 and voted for President Morsi. We have to make it very clear that it's the minority who didn't like the decision of the majority, which should be respected. And until Egypt and Egyptians respect the choice of the majority and accept that there has to be accountability, then we are set on having to accept this state of affairs. But Egyptians, I believe, increasingly are rejecting the military regime and are not going to sit by idly. They will stand up for their rights, and I believe Egypt will soon be back on a process and a democratic process that is its right and the right of its people.
Okay, let's hope. Maha Azzam, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.